The Silent Struggle. A reflection on the death of George Floyd. It was a clear day on May 25, 2020, when the streets of Minneapolis bore witness to a moment that would reverberate across the United States. At first glance, it was an ordinary afternoon, but what unfolded outside the Cup Foods convenience store would etch itself into the annals of history. George Floyd, a 46-year-old African-American man, found himself at the center of an encounter that escalated from mundane to catastrophic within minutes. The events began with a call to the police over a counterfeit $20 bill. A trivial act, perhaps one that could have been resolved with a conversation, a fine, or even understanding, yet, it quickly spiraled into tragedy. The arrival of law enforcement officers seemed routine at first. Floyd, visibly unsettled, complied with initial commands, his body language reflecting a man weighed down by far more than the immediate circumstances. As officers moved to detain him, the situation shifted, becoming a grim tableau. The image of Officer Derek Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for 9 excruciating minutes and 29 seconds became seared into the consciousness of all who saw it. Floyd's voice, steady at first but growing desperate, repeated 3 chilling words: "I can't breathe." His cries were not those of a man defying authority but of someone pleading for dignity. For air, for life, for those present. The scene was both ordinary and surreal. Bystanders, armed with nothing more than smartphones, recorded the encounter, their voices joining Floyd's as they implored Chauvin to relent. The officer's face remained impassive, a mask of indifference that spoke volumes about the systemic issues embedded within the inn. Floyd's final moments were captured in full view of the world. When his body finally went still, it was not just the end of his life but a stark unveiling of a society's unresolved struggles. The incident exposed a nation grappling with a dichotomy, the ideals of equality versus the entrenched reality of R. As the footage spread, outrage ignited across the country. Protests erupted in cities large and small, unified by a single demand: justice. For many older Americans watching the events unfold, it was a painful reminder of past civil rights battles, a stark revelation that the progress they believed had been made was, in many ways, incomplete. The George Floyd story is not just about one man's tragic death. It is a mirror held up to a nation, forcing it to confront its own reflection. For some, it was a moment of awakening; for others, a confirmation of a reality long ignored. In the months and years that followed, his name became a rallying cry, his image a symbol of resistance. But beyond the marches and slogans, the quiet question remains: how does a society heal when the wounds are so deeply embedded? And more poignantly, how many more George Floyds must there be before mean? The story of George Floyd does not end with his death. It lives on in the conversations we have, the choices we make, and the systems we challenge. It is a reminder that even in silence, there is power. And in remembering, there is hope. The Shadow of Justice. The story of Ahmaud Arbery. It was a crisp February morning in Sautia Shores, a quiet neighborhood in Georgia, where the pine trees whispered in the breeze, and the streets rarely saw more than the hum of everyday life. On February 23, 2020, however, this unassuming place became the stage for a tragedy that would unravel the fabric of America's conscience. Ahmaud Arbery, 25 years old, was an avid runner. That day, dressed in a simple white shirt and shorts, he stepped out for a jog, a routine that brought him solace. For Ahmaud, running was freedom, an act of joy and discipline. Yet, as he moved through the neighborhood, his presence was misinterpreted by 3 men who saw in him not an at. Gregory. For Ahmaud, the quiet jog turned into a desperate flight. The trucks roared behind him, closing in like predators. He had no weapon, no recourse but his speed and his will to survive. The grainy video later released to the public showed the climax of this chase, a confrontation. Travis McMichael stood in Ahmaud's path, armed with a shotgun. The moment was chaotic. Ahmaud, unarmed and outnumbered, tried to defend himself, lunging at Travis in a final act of defiance. The gunshots rang out, shattering the morning calm. Ahmaud collapsed. The initial response to his death was muted. The men walked free for weeks, claiming they acted in self-defense under Georgia's citizens' arrest laws. But the truth could not remain hidden. The video, filmed by Brian himself, found its way to the public, igniting outrage across the natio. For those who watched the footage, it was not just a killing, it was a lynching by another name. The image of Ahmaud, an unarmed black man hunted and gunned down, brought to the forefront the deep-seated racial prejudices that still pervade American life. It was a chilling reminder of the Count R. As P. Ahmaud Arbery's story is not just about the senseless loss of a young man with his whole life ahead of him. It is about the unspoken rules that govern who is seen as belonging and who is not. It is about the ways fear and ignorance can weaponize power, turning Neeg. For the older generations watching this unfold, it may feel like déjà vu, another chapter in a story they have seen too many times. Yet Ahmaud's legacy is more than his death. It is the unyielding demand for accountability, the insistence that no life should be deemed less worthy based on the The Park Encounter, the story of Christian Cooper. It was a serene morning in Central Park, New York City. The sun filtered through the canopy of trees, dappling the paths below. For Christian Cooper, an avid birdwatcher, this was his sanctuary. Armed with his binoculars and a love for nature, he often wandered the park's quieter corners, searching for the unique and beautiful birds that called tea. On May 25, 2020, Christian found himself in this familiar setting, observing the wildlife in an area where unleashed dogs were not permitted to protect the delicate ecosystem. It was there that he encountered Amy Cooper, a white woman walking her dog without a leash. Christian, calm and polite, approached her with a simple request: leash her dog as require. What followed was a moment that would ripple far beyond the park. Amy refused, her irritation quickly escalating. Christian, remaining composed, pulled out his phone to record the interaction, a decision born of caution and an understanding of how these encounters could often. In the video, Amy's demeanor shifted, her voice trembled, not with fear but with calculated performance. She threatened to call the police, explicitly stating she would tell them an African-American man was threatening her life. As she dialed, her tone rose to hysteria, conjuring a false eye. Christian stood his ground, his calm a stark contrast to her theatrical distress. He knew the weight of her words, the long history of how such accusations had led to devastating consequences for black men. Yet, he refused to be silenced, capturing the exchange with a steady hand. The video, shared by Christian's sister on social media, quickly went viral. For many, it was a chilling reminder of how racial bias could be weaponized in an instant. Amy's call to the police was not just a moment of frustration, it was an invocation of systemic power designed to place Christian's life in jeopardy. The public response was swift. Amy Cooper faced backlash, losing her job and becoming a focal point in conversations about racial privilege and accountability. Yet, for Christian, the incident was never about her downfall. He refused to press charges, emphasizing education and dialogue. Christian's story unfolded on the same day as George Floyd's death, a coincidence that underscored the spectrum of racial injustice in America. While Christian walked away unharmed, his experience revealed the subtler, insidious forms of racism that persist in everyday life. For older generations watching this, his story is a reminder that racism is not always overt. Sometimes, it's in the subtle, everyday moments where biases emerge, unchecked and unchallenged. It's a call to examine not just laws and institutions but the attitudes and assumptions that shape our interact. As Christian returned to birdwatching, his story remained a quiet but powerful reflection on the complexities of race in America. It is a reminder that the fight against injustice is not just about confronting the loud, violent moments but also addressing the quieter, insidious ones. In the end, Christian's grace in the face of confrontation became its own form of resistance, a testament to the power of staying grounded. Even when the world